Oh, come on. That's better. Welcome, welcome, and good morning. Got a new mic arrangement going on here. We'll have to see how it sounds and how I can keep it out of the way. All right, we got sound. How are we doing? Checkity check check. Hello, hello, hello. Am I missing something? Are you hearing sound, Alistair? I'm not hearing sound on my side. Maybe it's just early and I'm doing something dumb, but... Sound is good. Weird. What's happening on my end? Okay, then. I'm not going to worry about it. If you guys can hear me, that's the main thing. Great. So, I think the agenda today is to talk about solo arranging. I had a request for how to put melodies on top of harmony. So putting melodies with different chords. And that's always an interesting subject that folks seem to like. So thought we could go down that road and see where we end up. Thanks for tuning in. Gonna wait around until 10 o'clock before we get the lesson content started. Until then, feel free to check in and say hi and where you're from. How's the East Coast doing? I hear it's cold out there. And while I got you guys on the line, let's see if I can find it. I started something called a Discord, which is kind of a newfangled thing, but it's like a chat room that I'm going to post a link up to. If y'all want to jump on there and join in, we can continue the discussion and answer questions even after the stream is offline. So if you're so inclined, please head over there and join in the discussion and yeah, make yourself an account. I think you need an account, but it looks like it's pretty cool, and there are options for voice chat and video chat and stuff. I'll have to dig into the details once there's a little bit of a community over there, but I just started it yesterday, so it's probably going to be me, you, and one of my friends. But hopefully we can grow a little community over there. That would be the ideal idea. Aloha, Frank. Good morning. Hope you all are well. I was going through Trip travel pictures the other day, and saw some photos from the workshop I taught in Freiburg. It was fun. I loved that. That was just a really nice moment in my life. So thanks for being from an awesome place. Okay, so 10 o'clock. Subject of the day is solo arranging. A lot of people are interested in this style because it highlights the melody on top of harmony and allows you as the player to sort of be the entire band. So for instance, usually the song that I start teaching people with is Amazing Grace, just because it's simple, everybody knows it, and it works out nicely on the ukulele in the key of C. So if I was to play Amazing Grace in a solo fingerstyle way, this is kind of what it would sound like, is and this is more fancy than I'll teach you, but there, we could do that. That'd be fancy. Okay, been a while since I played that, but that's the idea, is you get that full sound where you're highlighting the melody with the chords. So what we can do is talk about how you achieve that in a nutshell. I'm not going to be able to show everybody every exact little thing. Sorry about the banging and scratching, but I think that'll work better. And then I can show you a cleaned up, more simple, straightforward version of that you can decorate on your own and kind of explore these concepts with. So basically, the human ear hears the highest note in any chord. If I play F, your ear hears that A string. If I play a C, your ear hears the C note on the A string. It's just what sticks out to the human ear. And so if we use that to our advantage, we can use that highest note as the melody in a given spot and still play a chord with it, and it won't be covered up by the rest of the chord that's going on. Even if you're playing a chord, it's got a louder volume that would otherwise drown the melody out. But if you put it on the top as the highest note, it's going to stick out and be recognizable to the ear as, oh, hey, that's a more prominent note. And if it's a recognizable melody, it's going to fit in with the chord. So that's really the main rule. And if you remember that, you can figure out pretty much any song by knowing the melody and the harmony, right? There's two of these different pieces, and what we're talking about today is putting them together. So what you need to know first is the melody, how to play the melody. So if we're going to do Amazing Grace, I'll show you the melody really quick, and you can kind of woodshed that while I'm talking about some other things, and we can explore how the different ways you could put the two together. So the melody for Amazing Grace in the key of C is going to be the G note, 3rd fret on the E string, and then third fret C note on the bottom string. We're going to use all of these notes repeatedly a lot. And then 7th fret, and then back to 3 and 7. So 3, 3, 7, 3, 7. Amazing Grace. And then we go down to the 5th fret. How 3rd fret, sweet, open the sound. And then 3rd fret on the E string. And for this, I would probably use my finger as a little bar on the 3rd fret and then reach up with my pinky afterwards. And then it repeats again a little bit. But instead of continuing down, you go up to the 10th fret. a wretch like me, right? So together is going to be. And then just to continue on, that's the bulk of the song that people are going to recognize. And it, as we start exploring the chords, you're going to see it takes a while to get through this. So I don't want to do any kind of a long song. But the last little bit, I once. So you're going to go 7, 10. And then 7, 10, 7, 3. And then we start. Actually, we go back to the 3rd fret on the E string. And then open bottom string. And then 3rd fret bottom string. Open 3 on the E string. And then we go back to our beginning little thing. So that last little bit is the weird one because it changes up. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Right? So play around with that for a little bit on your side, and then we can try and put it together. The thing to notice about the song is where you make your hand shifts so that it's easily playable. Because if you were to play, are you going to reach your pinky up to the 7th fret? Probably not. And then you're going to have to make a big hand shift and go and move your hand twice or 3 times to get those notes happening there. And that's not super ideal. So you want to start with your index finger, right? And then for this part, and then it's going to depend on what chords we put with this, how we're going to finger the notes. But just from a straight lead melody standpoint, you want to think about it kind of in where your index finger is going to end up and where your pinky is going to end up, because those are the leading fingers, whether you're going up or down. All together. So all together from the top, it's going to be. That's basically it. We're going to continue to, you're going to see those notes again and again as we add chords to them. So don't freak out quite yet if you're not quite there with the melody. Keep working on it as I go through the next bits of what we're going to be doing. If that was a struggle for you to pick up, it might be appropriate for you to just stick with the melody throughout the lesson and work on getting that dialed in, because you really want to know both parts very well. You want to be able to play, and of course in a 1 hour or 45-minute lesson, whatever this ends up being, it's hard to latch on and really get the part in such a limited amount of time. So that is a consideration, as well as if you just need to stick with the melody, just stick with the melody, that's fine. And then you can watch this again and go back and figure out what the chords are to make the arrangement happen. So your ear picks up the highest note in a chord, and when we're playing a melody, we always want to highlight the harmony of the chord we're playing over, right? So whatever you're strumming as you would be singing the song, that's the chord you want to place in with a given melody in a certain location. So what we need to know in addition to the melody is what the chord changes are. So if I'm gonna sing my way through the song, Amazing Grace, how sweet, then we go to F, sound back to C. Like me, and then G or G7. I see, da, 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 and then going to F and ba, 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 C, da, da, ba, G7 and C. Try it again. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Those are the chords. Wherever we are singing the melody or playing the melody, it ends up being the same notes, so we can think of it as being the same thing. Whatever chord we're over at that point, when we choose to throw in a harmony strum, that's the chord we're going to use. So if we're playing everything we're picking here, if I don't change chords when we go to F over my melody, it's going to sound wrong, right? If I play from here and stay on C the whole time, I mean, it doesn't sound bad because it's harmonious, but as far as the song goes, you're expecting a chord change there and it doesn't happen. So instead, we want to make sure that that chord change gets included in the arrangement. And don't worry, I'm not showing you the arrangement yet, but just showing off the idea and of having these chord changes in with the melody. So that highlights the song a lot better because now we're adding the chord change in with the melody. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I mean, really at the core of it, it's simple, but there are a lot of moving parts. And so that's where it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but stick with it. It's just really it's one of those things you just kind of have to work at and understand and practice and figure out as you go along. And then one day it'll be no big deal. Okay, so let's look at how we can put chords with the melody. And for what we're doing here, this is not very musical, but what we're going to do is every time there is a melody note, we're going to strum. So it's just going to be very plotting. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Super boring, super bad presentation. It'll sound nice, but it's kind of a bad presentation because there's no substance to it musically. I hate to say that there's nothing musical about it because there is, but as far as like a comprehensive presentation of the melody and the harmony, this is probably not the best way to do it. But it allows us to look at how we put a melody note with, or how we put a chord with every single melody note. And because of that, you do see some kind of funny stuff that'll help illustrate some of these ideas for you that you otherwise might miss out. Because a lot of times what people will do is they'll just play the melody and highlight the chord only in certain places. So what that would sound like is something like, right? You're not strumming everything. You're picking some notes and strumming other notes. And if you really want a comprehensive look at this subject, the Ukulele Way by James Hill it's his course on this, and it's really, he knows how to actually break it down into the different parts and synchronistic and anti-synchronistic or something along those lines, and all the different very specific styles, and he breaks it down much more than I am able to. But this is just a crash course, get you out the gate. But if you really want to study this and learn how it all actually ticks, that's a really good place to get a broken down, linear, step-by-step lesson plan. Anyways, let's look at how chords go with melody. I've said that a number of times, and now we're actually going to try and get started. You always want the melody note as the highest note, right? Your ear hears that best. The very first note of the song is a G note on the E string, 3rd fret. There is a string higher than this. So if we play a C around this note, we're going to lose that melody because your ear is hearing the highest note. Right? That's just a C power chord on the 3rd fret of the 2 bottom strings. Your ear hears when the melody we want is that. So anytime you're doing a solo arrangement, what you can do is you can terminate your strum through the strings wherever the melody is. You go up to and through the melody, but you stop after it. So in this case, when I have my chord strum, I'm going to brush down with my thumb so that it comes to rest on the A string, because I don't want to play the A string, otherwise I'm going to cover up the melody. And you can do that on lower strings. If you were playing a song that had like a melody that was much lower, you could just play whatever notes come afterwards. I'm playing on a low G. If you have high G, there's another bit of magic that's working for you when you roll down the strings instead of like strumming really quickly and just banging everything out. If you roll down the chord, so it's like a bra, bra, bra. If you go for that sort of a slow staggering of the notes, you actually get a second bit of help that's going to highlight that melody, because the last note the ear hears is also the most prominent. So if you're playing a high G, this G is actually the same pitch as your top string, right? Because the high G would sound, that's what you're hearing if you play high G. So it'd be even, and it would stand out because it's the same note. But if you're ever playing lower and you still have a high G, that high G is the highest note in the chord. But if you roll down to the melody notes, by having the melody note last in the bra, bra, you land on the melody note there, it's going to help highlight it even more. Right? So whether you're high G or low G, shouldn't really matter. If you're rolling into the note, you should be all right. So first note, and then we go down to the bottom string, 3rd fret is our next melody note. We're still on C. So you can just play a C chord. Whatever your harmony is doesn't really matter as long as you're playing notes from some version of a C chord that you know or don't know. You can look up different versions that might fit with higher melody fingerings, and that works as well. But like there are lots of ways to play C. I could play basic open C. I can play like a C power chord. I can play this C, and I could play like the B flat C. And I would still have this as my main melody note because that's the highest note in the chord. So whether I play this, it doesn't matter which variation I use because the harmony is the same. The harmony is C for all those options, and the melody note is C on the 3rd fret of the A string for all those situations. So it really just depends on the sound that your ear is drawn to. Do you like having more open strings? Do you like having a little bit more focused, tight sound? It really just depends on the arrangement and what kind of presentation you're going for. In this case, we're just getting through it. So we're just going to use easy chord voicings to as much of an extent as possible. So for this C, what I would probably do, since we're starting with the G note on the E string, I would probably just leave my finger on that power chord bar on the 3rd fret. That's the easiest way to play it. Okay, and then our melody goes up to the 7th fret, right? So we're going to need an additional melody note or additional chord to go with that melody. And now, because what we're playing on the lower strings is already C harmony, we can just move up to that harmony note and stick it on top. because the three open top strings, or like this, it's pieces of a C chord. You don't always have to play all of the C chord or all of the C chord that you know. It can just be a part of it, and it's going to fit because that's the harmony, and all you need is the melody on the very top. But what you could also do is, if you wanted to stay in a position or have a more focused sound, is when you move to a higher note, just like I could play this C, I could use a different shape and play C with a bar here, because that melody note is naturally part of a C that looks like F, right? If you take F and you add your index finger behind the nut and you were to shift the whole thing up the same amount to the 7th fret, so your index finger is barring the 7th fret, that note that ends up in the chord is your melody. So you could play, right? That's hard to play. What you probably want to do is just add your pinky finger on top of what we've already got. That's what I would probably do, just to get started, not to get too crazy or fancy, and just you know, get out of the gates. And then for the next bit, before we go to F, the last note before we change to F, you can just move down from the 7 to the 5th fret, and you can do all this without the index finger on the E string if you like. Totally depends, because whether I'm playing E or G on this string, they're both they're both a part of a C chord, so you can use either one as harmony, and it's appropriate. Just up to your taste, up to your ears, what your ears say. Yes, more of that, please. So we're here on the 5th fret, moving to F. So in this case, we can't just go, because our melody goes back to the 3rd fret, right? You can't just play C, because the chord changes underneath the melody in this place. So what we're going to do is play F and then capture the melody as the highest note above it. So what you can do is you just play F and then add a finger on the 3rd fret of the bottom string. This is a variation on F, because these notes are all within the F chord. Okay, and then after that we go to the open string, so you just play normal F. So high F, and then normal F, and then you go back to the 5th fret on the E string. And remember, for this one, you're not going to play the bottom string, because you need to highlight that G note. You just roll down to it and let your thumb come to rest on the A string. From all together from the top, and then I'll point one thing out when we get to the end. And your version might sound slightly different, because we're all going to choose different chord voicings that suit our tastes. And you know, there's only a limited number of ways you can really put this together, but you might find that your chords, that you like the sound of a completely closed off sort of version. Whereas it's all the notes are fretted, and you're keeping everything a little bit higher up the fretboard. That's one option. Or you might be playing it more like I'm playing it. It doesn't matter, because the harmonies are the same. They're interchangeable. Okay, the one thing I wanted to point out is when we're playing over C, we have these melody notes. Those are G, C, E. Those are the notes in a C chord. C, E, G. Theory-wise, that's what makes the chord. There aren't any other notes in a C chord. So when we're playing over C and we get to this D note, that D is actually outside of the chord. So when you're playing along and you end up with something like that, you might recognize chords like this because they're all just variations of C. And it's, if you're just playing a normal song, you're not trying to do a solo arrangement, you can just play one of these voicings and it'll sound nice because it's a different variation on C. But what you don't see are things like this, or even like this very often, because that D note is outside of the chord. We are artificially adding that in order to capture the melody in this location, but over a C harmony. So anytime you play a chord that has a melody note outside of the chord, you're probably going to end up creating something new and creating like a hybrid chord melody thing that incorporates that melody note, right? For instance, we changed the F here. Those are the two notes that we play on F are C and A. Both of those notes naturally occur in an F chord. But just for instance, say the melody went to a B note. A B note does not exist in an F chord. So you would have to figure out, okay, my next melody note is a B. How do I put a B as the highest note in an F chord? And you have to, it's sort of a little bit of problem solving, of, you know, rearranging what you're doing here to get the melody note on top. Otherwise, when you have melodies that, or notes from melodies that occur naturally inside the chords, then you're always going to have some sort of a chord shape that you can pull out of a book or something to go around it. If you're not sure exactly what to play, like oh, I need a 7th fret melody note over C. If you go and you look in Roy Sakuma's chord book and you go down and see like, oh, where's one that has a 7th fret on the A string, there's going to be an option there because it's inside the chord, or there's usually 95-98% of the time there's going to be an option. Whereas if you have a note that's outside of the chord, you're probably going to have to create something yourself. So we'll see a few more of those as we go further through the song. Otherwise, we're going to end up reusing a lot of these chords that we've already kind of come up with to incorporate the harmonies, because it repeats, right? So we have, and then it goes again, same thing, and then we change. We go to G7, right? And then the harmony note goes up to the 10th fret. So now we need a G or a G7 that goes around the 10th fret. This is a G note, and so it naturally occurs in a G or a G7 chord, obviously. So you could find this in a chord book. You could play it like that, but that doesn't fit our sound that we've been doing. So what I would probably do is use kind of a compromised chord along these lines. This is a little more open sounding, but it would be a bar on the 7th fret, and then you add your pinky on the 10th fret, just like C, right? You have C here. If you add your index finger behind the nut and you shift everything, you can move it all up the same amount, and you get it up to the 7th fret. That's a G chord, and it has the melody note on the 10th fret. Okay, so that line or if you want a little more open sound, you could leave the top string open because that's a G note as well. Okay, and then we go back to C. This part is a little bit more tricky. This is kind of the hardest, most convoluted bit. It goes right, or something. If you want to do a little more simple version, either way is completely fine. But now we're in like this zone. We need these two notes. So we have a C here already. That we know that this chord works as a melody highlight for the 7th fret E, but it's far away from. Okay, so that's another interesting thing is when we go here, that's all over C. This melody note is over a C instead of a G. So we go from here. Now we're on C. Right? So we're probably going to want to find a C variation that's up here in this zone so we can reach that melody note. That's the short story of the long explanation I was trying to give. So what I would probably do, you could play just the bottom string because we're playing over C now. You can use all those 3 open top strings as your harmony. You can do that. It's a little bit same. So what I maybe would try instead is this variation on C, where you play 7th fret with your pinky on the bottom string and then the middle finger on the 8th fret of the E string for your C. That to me is a little bit more interesting and lovely in that situation. Okay, but because we have our melody note changing over chords, we got to change the chord shape that goes around it. We can't use G here because we're not playing over G any longer. Okay, so for that little different C that we're trying up higher, you would add your pinky onto the 10th fret because that's now our melody note. And then we go down, and that's still over C, so you could play this or this or this or this, whatever your flavor is. And then we play the G on the E string. And then we're going to switch to an F chord. So you can just play normal F because our melody is the open bottom string. And then the melody shifts to that C, but we're still over F, so you want to add it to an F chord and not change back to the C chord yet. Okay, that's the hardest part of the song. If you've made it that far, you're in good shape. So from here, back to C for that last one, the C harmony, and then the melody note is the G. Okay. Whew. If you have any questions about any bits of that up to this point, the last little bit is basically a repeat, I think. So let's try it from the beginning up through the hard part, and just kind of follow your ears if you're ever lost. This is such a classic, familiar song that for figuring it out, it's kind of silly to be looking at a tab the whole time when you can just follow your ears and watch your fingers and know more where you're at, be a little more involved in the musical process. So let's try from the top. Here's kind of what we've got so far. Just repeat basically the beginning, but instead when we go back to this E note for the last time, we're switching to a G chord that we're playing over, so we can't keep playing C. Was blind but now there's a chord change there that we need to take into consideration. So it's supposed to be a G or a G7. That's an unrealistic reach, trying to hold G7 and just move the bottom string up. So we need to find a higher version of G7. So what you can do is you can just cycle through the different shapes you find in your chord book or you have in your mind. And so like I could play, okay, G7, that's too much of a reach. What if I go to the next G7? This would be the next G7. That's more realistic. So that would be 4, 5, 3, 5, just like an F7, but you slide it up 2 frets. If you were to reach up to the 7th fret from there, that's more realistic. It has a nice sound. That would be one option. And then you're right there for this next bit. This next D note is over a G or a G7 as well. So you could just reach and then resolve to the normal chord. Or what I like to do to kind of keep we've been doing a lot of open strings for this arrangement. So what I like to do is keep as many open strings going as possible. And for this, in order to do that, you can use this kind of weird G7 meets a melody note kind of thing, where you're playing open top string and then 5th fret on the C string, 7th fret on the E and the A. And then to get the D, you would just substitute, you'd take your pinky off and reveal the 5th fret and leave these 2 fingers in place. So that last line altogether, that's a little easier to play to than the other G7. Right? Any questions about that? Let's run through it one more time, just all in one piece, and see if follow along as best you can. If not, you'll at least have a reference to come back to and like, oh, that's what the whole thing sounds like all together. Something that I probably should have mentioned earlier is, remember, the song is in 3, so it's in waltz time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right? So if the count seems off, it's because it's in 3. So try and keep that rolling feel going in your head. Here we are from the beginning. Actually, this first G note is on a pickup. It's on the 3 of an imaginary bar before the song starts. So it'd be like if I was counting in, it'd be 1, 2, and then we'd start. Okay, so I'll count you in. You get two beats of count in, and then you play the G on the 3rd beat, and then the 1 is actually May. That's the 1 of the actual start of the song, right? Technical music stuff, just use your ears and compensate as you must. 1, 2. And we go high, the G. Control. That's the idea. Okay. Something I like to do when I'm counting in a time signature that I'm not familiar with, like if you're counting in 4, usually your brain just automatically goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it does it in the background as you're playing. But with 3, a lot of times people get unsure about where they're at in the beats, and the place they get most unsure is usually where there's a rest. Where there's nothing happening, people get antsy and they either speed through it and go on to the next thing, or they wait too long. It's hard to know which one it should be when you're just getting started and getting comfortable with counting in a different time signature. So for instance, if I'm counting with Amazing Grace, I think the majority of the song is quarter notes. So if I'm counting through it and I'm counting 1, 2, 3, and there's a note on, if it's going to be quarter notes where I'm playing, if there's not something that I'm playing, but I need to have that count, I will count in the gap, but not necessarily try and count while I'm playing, right? So for instance, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1. This is a big gap. 3. I'm changing it a lot. Lots of artistic license here. So by adding a click or adding a count and forcing yourself to have that little spacer in there, you're a lot more likely to stay on track. But for me, it's kind of wearisome for me to count like exactly what the song is the whole way through. You might need to do that though if you're just starting out. But for me, the compromise is to, okay, Brad, you're playing through the song and there's nothing happening right here. You need to have something in there to continue to feel the beat, feel what's happening in the song, and to hold it up to have that space. So that's just a general tip for counting, is that play your stuff, try and stay on time as much as possible, but then when there is a gap, count in the gap, or snap in the gap, or tap your foot in the gap or something, if it's not comfortable for you to do that at all times. Okay? Any questions? Please throw your questions in the comments if you got any. I think there is a sheet for that Amazing Grace arrangement or something very similar to it on the website. If you go to liveukulele.com and type in the search bar Amazing Grace, you can download a sheet from that. Dan asks a good question. I get mixed up as to how to fill those gaps where nothing happens. What you don't want to do in the gaps is add something that outshadows the melody. Otherwise, you can add whatever. And a lot of times, you might have noticed when I'm playing along, I'm playing a little boom, kind of a low note in that space. Instead of choosing to count or just leave a rest, it's a little boom or a little brush. But you want to make sure that when you play the brush in the gap, that it's much quieter, right? Because it's just supporting the melody. In this case of this song, where you have rest, usually is because a note is holding. Amazing grace, right? Wherever you're resting, you're holding a note. And the thing about the ukulele is it has really crappy sustain. You can't play a note and let it ring out forever, right? It goes away very quickly. So if you play that chord again in the space, you can kind of create the illusion of the note ringing for longer, but at the same time, where the note starts ringing is more important than it continuing to ring. So I would try and play anything in between a little bit quieter. So right, just really subtle, and that's super exaggerated. You don't have, it's going to take you a while and some work to kind of get that level of dynamic range to go like loud, soft. That's tough, and that's kind of a feel thing. But that's what I would add there, or just the boom. I like the boom, just kind of, it's almost like a subconscious keep going. It helps things go along. Can't follow my ears yet. I need tabs. Yes, tabs can be found on liveukulele.com. liveukulele.com. Yeah, and so I said this at the beginning of the stream. I've started a Discord to try and keep the conversation going, build a little bit of community. If you'd like, check out, there's a link in the description, but also in the chat. Feel free to jump on there and ask any other questions. If you end up like practicing this stuff and something comes up that you're not sure about, feel free to jump on there and ask a question. That'll be, it's easier than like trying to do YouTube comments or whatever, I feel, and hopefully we can have a little bit of a community vibe happen in there. I don't know much about it. There's not many people on there yet, disclaimer, but I would love it if you join and give me somebody to talk to during the day. That'd be kind of fun. F or D, like the key of F or D. I think as far as it goes, just because of how the ukulele is tuned, the key of C is hands down the easiest because you have the most open strings to work with. I mean, you have open strings to work with in F as well. All the notes of the open strings fit in the key of F, but they fit more over a C chord than they do over an F chord. So in that sense, just because your home tonality is usually the one you lean on the most, I would say C is the easiest, but it really depends. Some people like different keys. There's something to be said for playing in really hard keys too, because it forces you to arrange differently and to use different clever usages of open strings if there are any, or just of chord voicings. And so it completely depends. But if also if you were like going to sing the song, C might be bad for your voice, and if you need to transpose it, you can do so and just follow the guidelines of keep the melody note highest and don't cover it up by playing past it if it's on a lower string, just like that G note on the E string. Don't play the A string if that's your melody. So those are really the two rules of solo arranging. And like I said, if you want to study more, the Ukulele Way by James Hill is really great for that, because that's all it's about. It's like 60 something lessons of just solo arranging, from kind of very basic, like even more basic maybe than we were doing here, to super advanced. So if that's your cup of tea, that might be money well spent. It's like $9 a month, which is like 2 coffees, and we're all staying home, so it's like you're not even going to Starbucks. So that would be something to check out. Otherwise, yeah, there's the tab on liveukulele.com, and come join the Discord. Come chat it up about ukulele stuff. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I'll catch you next week. Mark your calendars, tell your friends, and yeah, same time, same place. We'll do it again. See you later. Have a nice day. Stay safe out there, especially East Coast. If you're gonna go driving somewhere, yikes, that sounds scary to me. But yeah, stay warm. Aloha.